This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about Castlevania getting a reboot, our highlights and lowlights from Gamescom, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to the Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 151. I am your host, the man who has been thoroughly covered in the flatulence and feces of a giant ape with a sword through his neck, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has both a water buffalo and a baby kangaroo, Justin, better known as I'm Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Oh man, I have not heard that reference in so long, but I'm glad to have that back again. But my week has been pretty well, I'll say. So I made an attempt for the first time ever. I made shepherd's pie, and this is I never had it before, and I had originally heard about it in a book I had read a long time ago, and I wish I remember what it was. But that was when I first heard about it. I was like, "Who has pie for dinner?" And not knowing what it actually was, so I saw a recipe and I tried it. Now, it used pork instead of lamb. Okay. But I tried it, and overall it wasn't that bad. I didn't think it turned out that bad, and I'll be trying, I think, something that's a little bit different. The recipe might be a little bit different, but I'll be trying something in a few more weeks. So I'll see how that goes. But it wasn't that bad, and I would definitely try it again. I might try to see if I can find one that uses lamb, and then also, see if I can find some that's lamb. That's not expensive or anything, but yeah. I might try it that way. And then over the weekend, because just the discussion that we had this past week about it, and also just because my friend had been talking more about it, I was like, all right, I really want to go back and look at my old Magic the Gathering cards that I had and go through my decks and see how they stack up and whatnot. So I went into storage, I pulled the decks out. The majority of my cards are still in storage, but I at least pulled the decks I had used out, and I was like, all right, let me just look through them. And I realized quite a few of them were just garbage. The one white-green deck I had, I understood the idea I had, but I just added in too many filler cards that it was just really bloated. And then my original red, blue, green deck, which I now, looking back, and now just going to refer to as my RGB deck, that one was just an incoherent mess because I originally just merged two intro decks together and then just slapped in different cards where I was like, there's no cohesive thoughts. So that one is going to need a massive overhaul, but my black-red deck, that one still is I think is pretty decent. Nice. And then my white-black deck, I had to tweak a few things, but that one I also thought was like, all right, that one actually still holds up pretty well, I would say. So it was nice going back to look through the cards and stuff, but I also sort of saw my progress from being horrible at making decks to being somewhat better. So it was just interesting from that perspective. And then today I had an off day, which I originally was going to take off just to spend time with a buddy, but I wasn't certain what his availability was going to be, so I was like, I won't say anything to him. So it just left me with a free day off, so I just stayed home, partially worked on on my next video, but also did a little gaming as well. So not a bad day, I would say. Nice. Oh, and also I tried the new Chick-fil-A s'mores milkshake, which was actually pretty good. So
sounds good. Very cool. All right, so let me see if I can remember all the things. First of all, the shepherd's pie. I was going to make a joke. Did it have crab and Old Bay seasoning in it? Because
oh man, I feel like somewhere there's some Marylander who tried that.
I think it would probably work. I mean, realistically, I mean,
the problem is with the vegetables and the crab meat, I'm just not certain how that would turn out.
I think if you did the right kind of vegetables, it could work. I think that's a challenge worth accepting. I could probably make it work pretty well, I think. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't use like real crab because of how expensive it is, but at least with imitation crab, perhaps. Because I mean, crab and potatoes go well together. Crab and mashed potatoes would go well together. So,
right.
It's the other parts. I've actually never had it with lamb. I've only ever had it with ground beef. And it's been kind of mixed on like how good it is. Just depends on who makes it and how well they season it and everything. But I don't know if I'm not sure if I've ever actually made it myself. I mean, I've had it a handful of times, and sometimes it's been like really, really good, and other times it's just been extremely bland. But yeah, that's cool. So here, oh yeah, magic decks. I mean, I still have all of my old decks built and just in bags that I have sitting on a shelf. And so here, I know I have a solid green deck that is basically, it's heavily on elves and like high damage dealers. Like I have some bears and I have Gus, what's the one creature? One of those that's like 7/7. It's a 7/7, and I can't remember the name of it, but it can deal direct damage to HP as well.
Oh.
And I mean, it has pretty high mana cost. I can't quite remember what it is, but it's been a long time since I've played it, and yeah, it was just like heavily elf, very elf heavy, and just lots of effects related to what the elves could do. And then, of course, like I said, also a number of high damage dealers, and I think like some creatures that make tokens and that sort of thing, like 0/1 tokens or 1/1 tokens, something like that. I can't remember. It's been a long time. It's an amalgamation of different stuff because I guess that would have been like probably 2000 when I first got introduced to the game. My cousin just gave me all his cards. And so most of the cards I have are ones he gave me. And then I, bought a handful of packs beyond that before I left California. But, yeah, and I have like a white and blue deck, which I mostly made it white and blue because of the fact that I had a couple of the mixed element mana cost cards that use like white and blue. And it was like, it's heavy on clerics and angels, I believe. Plus, plenty of counter spells and that sort of thing. And then I think I have a black and red deck. I don't remember what all's in there. I have a solid black deck that's like very heavy on rats. Very, very heavy on rats. And I can't remember what else. And then I know I have a solid white deck. And then I have a solid red deck that's just heavy on damage dealing spells more than anything else. At least if I'm remembering correctly which ones I have. I always thought they were good decks. Whenever I played against other people, they did pretty well, but I'm sure that people who have played a lot more than I have would kick my butt. So I don't know. I had fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. If I could ever convince my oldest son, I think he would really enjoy that. It's just every time we've tried to get him to play card games, he's never interested. So who knows? Maybe I can convince him one of these days. Trying to remember what else. That might be it. But yeah, okay. On my end, let's see here. So I know Thursday afternoon, I started feeling kind of sick, and it wasn't like sick. It was more just like I was starting to feel achy and had a little bit of a fever. And it was, pretty light fever, just like 99, just barely a fever, but it was enough to where it was giving me chills. And, I finished out the day, and then the next day I worked a half day and then took the rest of the day off. And thankfully I was feeling fine by the time Saturday rolled around, because I was doing music on Sunday. So and there wasn't anyone else who could play the guitar in place of me, so it's like they wouldn't have a lead instrument. It would have just been the violin, which is just my wife. So it's like, yeah, but at least the couple that normally sings were both available. They were both feeling better, so they were able to sing too. So it wasn't totally reliant on me from that standpoint. But I'm trying to think what else. Oh, I smoked a brisket on Friday. Yeah, I started on Friday because, well, of course there was that ice cream social, which I ended up not going to because I was a little bit sick and I just didn't want to risk spreading anything to anyone, even if it was very mild overall. So we didn't do pizza night on Friday, so we did it on Saturday, and so I smoked the brisket starting Friday night, did about 20 hours of smoke time, and then made a brisket pizza on Saturday with that. With some of that, there's still a bunch of brisket left, but of course the brisket pizza is delicious. But I thought about it, and like usually whenever I do brisket, I'll take any excess fat and I'll chop it up and then make it into tallow, which basically the normal way I do that is I put it in like a big Dutch oven, and then I just turn the heat on low and stir it for a while, and after a while it basically sweats out all the liquid fat from the fat, and the fat solidifies and that sort of thing. And then you have tallow that you can use for frying, for cooking, etc. But I thought about it and I realized, I bet I could put the tallow in the smoker at the same time that the brisket's going, and then it renders all that out without me having to babysit it, or I keep it on the stovetop. Plus it gives it a smoke flavor. So I just did that, and it's like worked perfectly. I'll be doing that every time from now on because that's so much easier. And yeah, more than anything, it was because I had, like, when we got the half cow, what was that? I guess it was earlier this year. I always have them give me the excess fat because then I can make tallow. And so I had just, a big plastic bag full of beef fat that I, just hadn't got around to making into tallow. And sure enough, that was an easy way to do it. So that was nice. But trying to think, there's something else I was going to mention. I guess that might be it on my end. Nothing else I can really think of. I mean, something you could be praying about. One of the couples in our church who, they're one of the multiple couples in our church that were expecting a baby, and their son had to be delivered early. He was delivered at 34 weeks, so 6 weeks early. His lungs hadn't quite fully developed yet, and that sort of thing. So he's in the NICU right now. He seems to be doing well, all things considered, and the mom is recovering and everything from the C-section she had to get for the delivery. But definitely be praying for him more than anything else. I mean, like I said, it seems like he's doing well considering he's in the NICU. He's doing about as well as they expect. So anyway, yeah. So definitely want to be praying for them. But
definitely.
Yeah, I feel like there's something else I'm forgetting about, but honestly, I can't remember what it is. We'll get into the gaming talk here shortly, but yeah.
All right, definitely. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, definitely be praying for them. That definitely was an interesting idea about smoking the tallow with the brisket. Definitely certain that helped with enhance the overall flavor. So yeah, that was definitely a good idea. I might definitely have to look into that. There's another question I had regarding that. I can't remember what the question was, but I guess sort of going back. I know that it's been a while, but I was just curious about when or what the last, I guess, block you were into for a Magic the Gathering. I was just curious what that could have been.
So what do you mean? Do you mean when the last time was?
Or I guess roughly, I guess what year like you sort of like dropped out might be.
Well, I mean the last time I specifically remember buying cards was probably 2003, because I
Oh,
haven't.
okay.
I may have. I actually no. The last time I bought cards was 2005. I'm pretty sure that was the last time, because I remember that when I visited Sacramento after I graduated from high school, I went to one of the local card shops and just went through all of their like random loose cards and bought a bunch that way. And I'm pretty sure that's the last time I ever bought any cards. But they were, all old, mostly old ones, and I would say probably the newest ones I have are 2003.
Okay.
So I don't even know if all of them are still technically usable, but
I mean, technically, and I mean, I'm not in the know for these type of things, but technically, they all are usable. It would be considered part of, I don't remember what it's called, like vintage probably, and I mean, depending, I think maybe on like the 2003 cards, it would be probably in the modern bracket, depending on how the cards are designed. But they're technically still usable.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, what have you been playing this week?
I've been playing quite a few games. So the first one is going to be Core Keeper. I went back to this with some buddies and we played some more of this together. And we went and primarily handled some of the bosses that were the newer areas and stuff like that. So there were a couple of different Hydra bosses. The first one was I guess the best way to describe it would be Pontiff Sullivan from Dark Souls 3, just because there is the main boss, and there are two phantoms that fight alongside him.
Yeah.
And however, unlike with the Pontiff, these two appear from the get-go, so you are fighting the main one while the other two are fighting with him, and it definitely was a pain, especially since you can't deal damage to them, but they can deal damage to you. So between energy beams that can track you, shockwaves that will wipe out most of your health unless you're behind a pillar, even if you're a great distance away, as I learned the hard way, and just other annoying things made that boss fight quite annoying. But we got through that with a few deaths here and there. And then we later on went and tackled another Hydra, or different Hydra. This one, I can't remember what his deal was, but he had some sort of gimmick. He still operated the same way fundamentally, but he had one thing that was just unique to him. But fortunately, he didn't have like 2 extra phantoms fighting alongside him, so that made it a bit easier in that sense. We also had a new piece of gear later on that helped a whole lot. That essentially was a staff that could drain mana from enemies, and as you attacked, it would amplify the damage dealt, so that was very useful with handling them. So we did that for a few times. We were trying to also farm some stuff from the bosses, so we did that for a while. But overall, it was pretty good. Alright, so the next game that I've been playing also, and I'm doing this in order of games that I've played, has been Pal World. And this week has been a bit of a slow period, just because, again, the problem that was bothering me last time was I needed oil to get newer gear and better gear. And the good news is I do have oil now, which took me a while to actually get a pump installed. Also, the bad news was that I could get oil, but in order to make the better furnace, I need to get better ore, better ingots and stuff like that. I needed to build a new furnace, which required me to build, or rather to craft, or smelt the ingots I needed to build it. So that was another sort of slow process there. But once I got that up and running, I was able to have 2 pals assigned to a single furnace. That way it makes smelting a whole lot easier, or rather quicker.
Okay.
And so that helped with developing new weapons. And the good, well, before I got to that point, I was still exploring at the time, and I said, hey, let me look at this one area, because there's like this one mystery pal that's over here. I was like, all right, it's a simple boss, so I will go face it. And I said, oh yeah, it's not that bad. No, it's just like a larger version of stuff I've seen before. And then I was like, okay, this doesn't seem right. I was like, oh wait, is this a legendary? I was like, oh, this is a legendary. And the good news is, thanks to the armor I had, I was able to survive it. The bad news was, my pals weren't able to survive it. So I was like, I have to make a hasty retreat. And also, the weapon I had just wasn't going to deal enough damage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, man, I really want to face this thing because it's very doable, I think. So I decided, you know what? I'm actually going to go ahead and bring the pals that would be strong enough to fight this thing. And also bring, the ones that would be strong against it, which would be fire types. And so I did that this time, and it went a whole lot better. And in fact, this is the second attempt that you're seeing in the video right now, if you're watching the video version. Yeah. And it definitely took a few attempts, and unfortunately I wasn't able to pull one of the pals back before he got wiped out, so he was downed, but the others were able to survive the fights, and so I was able to capture it. And unfortunately, I also had the Ring of Mercy, which prevents you personally from being able to kill an enemy. So even if it would be enough damage that would normally kill it, it always leaves the enemy with 1 HP.
Nice.
Now the downside is if you have a pal that's fighting with you, you have to be careful, otherwise they're going to kill it.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that I withdrew any pals I had active. But yeah, so I was able to catch it, and it was actually at that moment I also learned that I was wrong about I think Belle Noire being the first legendary pal I've caught, because technically it's not legendary because it doesn't have the legend passive status. So it's, even though it's a harder type of pal to fight, it's technically considered a raid boss and not a legendary. Gotcha. So I don't know why, but it is what it is. But yeah, so I caught my first legendary pal, and there are still several more, but I'm just like, 2 of them I already know are going to be a pain in the butt to deal with, and I'm not ready for them. But the other one, considering based on the achievement rankings that I saw on Steam, the other one technically I believe should be about the same difficulty-wise, if not maybe a little bit easier, because that one had a higher, or I guess it had a higher completion rate than this pal. So I'm like, alright, so maybe it's not that bad then. So I could probably go and try fighting the other one. But because of my victory here, I said, you know what? I think I have enough confidence to go ahead and fight the tower boss, the next tower boss that I had postponed, because I was like, I'm really concerned that this won't work out. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to go and fight this boss right now. That was the wrong choice to make. So I know before in the past I've said that the tower bosses have been nerfed from the early access version. I don't think this one was nerfed. I mean, you have 5 minutes to beat the boss like the other boss fights, but again, like I said before, they had lower health pools. This boss has a noticeably higher health pool than the other ones, and additionally, the damage that was dealt out wiped out 3 out of my 5 pals, and ultimately, I think, no. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I either died outright or I timed out. But either way, I lost the boss fights, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm ready for this. I think I need just stronger pals, because while I've leveled up quite a bit, they haven't, because I've been swapping out pals here and there.
Gotcha.
But I really just need to level up some pals, bring them out, and get them, to be better equipped. And additionally, I needed to have just a better weapon. While it's been very useful for a long time, the rifle that I've been using just has not been able to keep up with the rate of the difficulty. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna hate myself for crafting a weapon only to find like the schematics for a better version, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get or I guess what I would consider to be the most preferable weapon to use right now, which is the I think it's the laser rifle. I think that's what it's called. But I was able to get that today while I was playing, and so I was like, all right, I'm not entirely certain how much better it is than the semi auto rifle I've been using, because damage seems somewhat comparable. Now granted, I know that I'm using a improved version of the rifle, but this one still just seems meh-ish. So I don't know. But I'll see what happens. I might try again next week and see what happens with the boss, but until I know for certain that it's going to be better, I might not make another attempt until my pals are stronger and I'm just overall in a better state.
Yeah.
But I'm at least like be able to fight the legendary I fought. And then lastly is Peak, which I played with another buddy of mine, and we did a little bit of progress. Now it's been a while since I've played Peak, so I wasn't entirely certain what to. Trying to remember the controls was like the biggest thing I had, and trying to like, all right, cool, I understand the goal, but I just don't remember how to play exactly. So it took a bit trying to get back into the swing of things. We got through the first level fairly well enough. We were able to find enough items that made traversal easier, so we were pretty well equipped there. The problem is the second level, which you're actually seeing right now. It's called Roots, and the issue with this is that there are, well, 3 issues with it. One, there is a poison, well, it's sort of like a poison swamp, so it's like the Miyazaki level of the game, where there's just like poisonous areas. There are also zombies that are around there that can kill you. There are bugs that can kill you. There's wind that can blow you off. So unless you hold on to something, you'll be blown off and fall to your possible likely death. So that level's just been a pain. So every time we've played the game, both in another session and in this session, and we also got Roots twice for the second level, which is weird because I'm pretty certain it's supposed to be random as far as which level you get after the first one. Because like I know that last time we got another area which was a ice level that was for the second level. So how we got Roots twice in a row is confusing, but I absolutely hate Roots so much because it's just so annoying. And yeah, I mean, we might try again at some point, but I'm not really too eager to get back just because I just hate this level.
Yeah.
But you know, we might give it another go at some point. But yeah, I'd say overall that was fairly decent enough for just getting back to it when we did. But yeah, but that's everything that I've played this past week.
All right. Well, of course, when it comes to Pal World, definitely congrats on getting your first legendary. And you know, each time I watch this, I'm like, this game looks fun. I do want to play it someday. But yeah, very cool stuff. Let's see here. I guess that's all I really had for the thoughts on that. I feel like there was something else, but that may have been it. All right, so my list this week is longer than last week, but most of these I didn't play a ton. So trying to kind of go in order. First of all, I played some more of Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13. I kind of sort of got stuck when I was playing last week, because I was playing, I think on Wednesday was the last time, and there was like a main quest that I was doing, but because of the way the time limits work on like when certain areas are open and when they're not, and being able to get, well, in this case, literally what I needed was I was supposed to find these glowing numbers around the map, and the last number I needed was only in an area that's only open from midnight to 6 a.m. But if I got to midnight without finding all the numbers, then someone else would be killed, which makes it so that basically basically the way I was looking at it is I was thinking, oh man, it's been a while since I didn't save before I started tracking down the numbers before the gate closed for that area, so I can't go back to that area. And so I was starting to think, oh man, am I gonna have to start over the game? And it's like, yes, it wouldn't be that big of a deal if I had to restart the game, but at the same time, it was just kind of, I didn't really want to do that. And I didn't, I didn't take the time to look and see whether or not it really mattered. If I couldn't get it the first time, like, would it make a drastic difference in my ability to get, the best ending and everything else? And so I just basically had kind of stopped playing it. Now, after the fact, I think yesterday, because I needed to record some footage, I had looked it up a little bit prior to that, and found out that while it's true that someone else will probably die when I do that, the quest just resets each day if you don't complete it, or until you complete it. So that made me decide, okay, I'm obviously not going to worry about trying to restart. I'll just continue on from where I am and then go from there. And so yeah, I probably put like another hour into it. I basically played during my lunch break yesterday, and a little bit, I think, the same for last week. Yeah, something along those lines last week. But what I did ended up trying out, actually, let me back up. I also played a little bit of Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. Not very much. Basically, I played like, I think, an hour or so over the weekend. And then I decided to, then I played a little bit, like, I think yesterday or the day before, just for the sake of getting some footage recorded. But there wasn't a whole lot of time put into that. Probably like another 2 hours altogether. So not very much. But as I had talked about last week, I decided to try out the Metroid Prime Hunters PC port. And so this one is an interesting one. One of the first things I want to note is that because this is in its alpha stage right now, the port still has some issues. Some of those things have been fixed since I recorded this footage, but there's still some issues with it. So, the main thing that was an issue, well, back up. With this, someone added in by default, this has mods so that you can have 21:9 widescreen, which I don't even have an ultra wide monitor, so it doesn't do me any good, but there's no 16:9 or 16:10. And so your options are either play in the original aspect ratio or play in 21:9. And 21:9 ends up working a bit better, even though it's not ideal. And because the full screen wasn't working at the time properly, I had to like manually adjust the size of the window. And it does a separate window for the bottom screen, and you can map some of the functionality for the bottom screen to keys on the keyboard and that sort of thing, but sometimes you still have to basically tap out to go to the second screen in order to tap the appropriate button. So that aspect's a little wonky. The other thing that it adds as a default mod is what they call Prime controls, and it makes it so that you can play the game mouse and keyboard. And playing the game with mouse and keyboard is glorious. It is so nice, especially once I actually once I actually added in the or remapped some of the buttons that they had mapped to keys to mouse buttons instead, which has made it a lot more seamless, particularly for things like bringing up the scan visor and for going into the morph ball. I can't remember if there's any other things I had mapped to that, but either way, the main thing is that it definitely just made a big difference. And actually, I think it was the same with switching over to the missiles as well, that you could, yeah, I have that mapped to the mouse as well. So that's also convenient. But more than anything, it's just the aiming. And then, of course, being able to move with WASD also makes it a lot easier from that standpoint. The launcher has the option of increasing the, basically upscaling it. So it's not like full HD by any stretch, to where it's actually like high resolution textures and that sort of thing. But it does at least improve things to where it looks a lot better than the default resolution. So I know that like if you emulate the original DS version, there's actually mods that drastically improve the visuals and give them actual like HD textures and everything like that. And there might actually be a way to add those onto this version, but I haven't tried it yet, because I basically just put like, I think maybe 2 hours into it. Mostly, I completed the very first level and not much past that. I like started partway into the second level, and that's as far as I've gotten. And because of the fact that there are still some issues with the launcher, or at least there were issues with the launcher at the time, like the fact that it wouldn't save your settings, and the fact that you could set it to go exclusive full screen and it wouldn't go full screen at all. And just other various things that I definitely still need some work. I didn't, play anything beyond that. Plus, of course, I obviously was playing other games. So more than anything, I just wanted to test it out. I've only tried it on the laptop. It's capped at 60 FPS, but it pretty much maintains that. So that's perfectly fine by me. And yeah, I don't have any footage of it from earlier today, but I did boot it up with the updated version of the launcher. And with the updated version of the launcher, some of the issues that it had, like, for example, the fact that it wouldn't recognize the ROM every single time, was definitely an annoyance. And I'm hoping that they'll set it up to where, well, actually, originally I know that if you tried to skip the launcher originally, it didn't work. Like, it had the option to skip the launcher and just boot straight into the game, but it wouldn't work. And I think the main reason it wasn't working is because it wouldn't read the ROM properly every time, and so you'd have to keep re-adding the ROM each time in order to run it. So I believe now that they fixed some of those issues, like of it reading the ROM by default, it probably could be launched without going under the launcher, but I haven't played around with it that much. Full screen works now, though. The problem is that it's still, your options are either 21:9 or 4:3, and 21:9 gets stretched out in a wonky way, and 4:3, like, feels kind of pointless when you're playing on a widescreen monitor. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, it does control very well, at least apart from a couple aspects that require you to be able to press the bottom touchscreen. And you can do that. Usually it's just holding down the tab key, and then you can mouse over to the touchscreen to press it. But either way, it's not ideal, and there's definitely still some refinement that needs done with this. And, hopefully there will be like some good mod support if there isn't already. I just really haven't done a whole lot of research on that end, so. once that's all handled, I'm sure I will play more of it, but it's also not a priority for me. More than anything, it was just like, okay, the fact that this exists is amazing, and since I've never finished the original DS version, even though I still have my copy of that, playing it on PC is definitely the ideal way to play. And if they ever make it possible to get above 60 FPS, that'll make it even better. But even as is, even if nothing changed from this point, it would still be a better way to play it overall. So, but because of my frustration with Lightning Returns at the time, and the fact that one of my goals for this year, I've been going over, the goals I had set at the beginning of the year regarding games, my gaming resolutions, and one of my goals had been to finish 13.2 and then start 13.3, which I did, or at least start 13.3. But then another goal I had was to finish one of the Souls-likes that I had started last year and hadn't finished yet. And of the ones I'd started, I determined the one that I was furthest in that made the most sense to continue and try to get back into was Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. And so I have been playing that a bunch. And I can't tell you the exact number of mini bosses I've gotten through, but I want to say it's probably like 7 or 8 more mini bosses. Because the footage here, I think, has like 6, and then I fought like, I think at least another 3 besides that I didn't get footage recorded for. So that part I'm not entirely sure about, but I did also fight the next 3 of the proper big bosses. One of which was actually one that I completely cheesed. Mostly because I started it very late last night. I mean, like, I started right before it was bedtime, and I didn't want to take the time to fight it because it's basically like a more or less a 3-phase version of a boss that I had previously already beaten. And so I just didn't feel like messing with it. I looked up a cheese strategy, found one that made it so that the 3 phases turned into 1 phase, and decided to do that. But I'll get to that one because that was the last one I faced. But before I did that, not only was I able to finally take out one of the headless, because there's multiple of them, which I actually don't have that one recorded, unfortunately. But there's another one that's like similar, that it's not a headless, but it's kind of similar, except that unlike the headless, it doesn't slow you down when you're near it. So you don't have to worry about that aspect. It's actually with Shichiman Warrior is the one that I'm talking about. And I think there's 2 of them in the game. But it does have, the terror effect similar to what the headless does. And that's the one I'm actually fighting in the footage right now. And that one thankfully didn't take me too many tries to get through. The headless, on the other hand, definitely took me a handful of tries, but because there are some similarities in the mechanics between the Shichiman Warrior and the headless, I decided I would go ahead and try my hand at fighting the headless. And so I was able to fight and defeat that very first one that you are likely to encounter early in the game. So that was quite satisfying. And I fought one other one, but I did not beat him. I've tried him a handful of times, and I think I got him to the second phase, more or less. I mean, it's not really a phase, but more the second bubble. I think at least once, maybe twice, but I have yet to actually beat him. And more than anything, it's because of the fact that the way that you can do a good amount of damage to them is having Divine Confetti. But early on in the game, Divine Confetti is a very rare resource that you rarely get. And on the rare occasion you get it, it's pretty easy to burn through. But if you don't have that on, then you don't do much of any damage to the headless. And then, of course, you have to deal with all the terror stuff and so on and so forth. So basically, I haven't been able to beat that second one I've come across. But I think there's 5 or 6 total headless in the game. I think 3 of those are underwater. And in one case, it's like you fight one on its own underwater. And then in another case, there's 2 of them underwater together at the same time. Which I guess that's kind of a spoiler. You at some point you do get, after you beat a certain boss, you get the ability to dive underwater. And you don't have to worry about oxygen. You can be under there endlessly. So, slight spoiler there, but it is what it is. I said it, and it's not a big deal. Okay. So yes, I couldn't tell you the exact number of mini bosses that I faced, but I faced a handful of them. But the big bosses that I faced were definitely first and foremost the Guardian Ape. And I had heard he was tough. And he definitely was tough. I couldn't tell you how many times it took me to beat him. I don't know if it was quite as much as Genichiro. But it still took me quite a while to beat him. And I tried a few different varieties of strategy. I never really could get good enough to parry him consistently. And so I was definitely struggling with him quite a lot. Because he hits hard, he hits fast, he's all over the place. If you are behind him for too long, then he farts on you and can poison you. If you get too far away from him, he will pull feces out of his butt and throw it at you, which also can poison you and do damage to you. He was just a big pain in the butt to deal with. And from what I could tell, there wasn't really a way to cheese him per se. There's a way to make the fight easier if you have the Mortal Blade before you face him. But it doesn't necessarily, it still doesn't make the fight easy. Like, there's still a lot of challenge because you have to get the attack off at the right times and all of that. And even then, while it does a lot more damage, it does a good chunk of damage. It's still not like each hit does a ton of damage. The biggest thing is that it's helpful for stunning him for a bit so that you can get some more follow-up hits. And you don't have to, obviously you can do that without using the Mortal Blade. The Mortal Blade just basically, if you can get the hits off, which it has kind of a long draw time, then it will actually make it so that you can more easily take them out. Now, I watched one of these Souls streamers who's like really, really good at the game, and she was able to beat him so quickly that she could make a short out of it because she basically did the speedrun strat, which it's mostly just knowing the right timing. You're using the Empowered Mortal Blade, but you're also having to get the timing just right to where you can get it off on him as soon as you land next to him, and then you hit him a few times, and then you can get it off again, and you just kind of keep that until his first phase is done. And then when his second phase happens, if you can stop him from doing his terror-inducing attack, then you can stun him and go from there. I couldn't get that done. Because she had it done in, like, I want to say it was 30 seconds. She had the entire fight complete because of that. And I'm sure she's fought this thing dozens or hundreds of times and has beaten him multiple times because she's also very skilled. So I did utilize Mortal Blade as my ultimate strategy, because before that, I would get him to phase 2 sometimes, but it wasn't consistent enough. I'd usually be low on gourds or and or would be just incapable of actually getting enough. I'd have used up my revive and hadn't been able to get it up to do the next one, and so on and so forth. I guess I also forgot to mention there was also the corrupted monk that I faced before the guardian ape. That one took me a handful of tries, but it wasn't quite as bad. More than anything, I just took advantage of being able to, because that one's, even though it's a boss, it's only a one phase boss. So you just have to get through one health bar, but you can stun them with fireworks, with ashes, or with what you call them. I think they're called snap seeds. I call them snap peas because that's what they look like to me. Same thing that you use for phase 2 of Lady Butterfly. So, yeah, the snap peas. So anyway, but going back to the guardian ape. So he basically just, the key thing was, I found out that if you use the mortal draw, if you jump up in the air, it does the empower, it's as strong as using a regular empowered mortal draw, which requires having spirit emblems. But the problem is that because of how many times I died and how little I wanted to actually grind, I was out of spirit emblems, and I was also out of Sen, so I couldn't buy more spirit emblems. And so I couldn't use my tools, and I just basically was in a spot where the only real option was, okay, I need to try doing this. If I could figure out how to parry consistently enough on the ape, then I could beat him normally. But I really just, I couldn't. Well, I should say, I was not able to get the timing down right. Now, maybe if I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked at it, I could eventually get it. But I'm not that skilled to begin with, and parrying in this game is not necessarily always my forte, especially when it comes to just some inconsistencies as far as when the attacks come in, and learning the patterns well enough to where I can read the movements and not, panic block or whatever, panic dodge and that sort of thing. So for me, what ended up working better with the guardian ape was mostly just mostly dodging, avoiding his attacks, and then anytime I had a good opening, jumping up using the mortal blade so that I could do a chunk of damage, and then after a while he would get stunned, and then I could do some more damage while he was down for a little bit, and so on and so forth, until eventually I get to phase 2, and then phase 2 he acts quite a bit differently, but you can still obviously use the mortal blade on him, and it's a different kind of challenge. That one's easier to parry for sure, but there were still some times where the parrying was a little more difficult, especially because some of the attacks would not quite get close enough to where I could parry, or like I'd somehow be at just the right spot to where they would miss me completely, and so then I didn't even have the ability to parry them, and so it was just kind of working through that, and eventually I figured it out. I actually came really close, surprisingly, to actually beating him. Or no, I'm thinking of the next boss. Never mind. But regardless, I eventually beat the guardian ape. It just took me a bunch of tries. Now, the boss that definitely, I want to say, he took me fewer tries than the guardian ape, much fewer tries than Genichiro, but was still a very difficult boss, was the Great Shinobi Owl. And he was... I checked a couple of different guides. Particularly, I checked What's-His-Face's guide, Fighting Cowboy. And his basic thing was you parry a couple of his attacks and do counterattacks when you can, and then when he does his jump attack, you move behind him and you use, I can't remember the name of the attack because I barely use it, but it's a double down slash. It's like it does a lot of posture damage if you can get it off. But the problem was that I was not used to using that attack at all. And so like, I couldn't quite figure it out. And so his idea was you use that for phase 1. That gets his posture built up rather than worrying as much about getting damage taken care of. And then you can get into phase 2. And then phase 2, you use Mortal Draw to the same effect. I tried that for quite a while. Mostly I tried, more than anything, the issue I had was with the parrying. Like, I just couldn't get the parry timing quite right. And so I ended up just having to ultimately resort to dodging instead. For me, that was just much easier. I still would get hit frequently. It still took me a bunch of tries. But eventually I was able to beat him, and I was very satisfied when I finally beat him, because it was it was a very frustrating fight. I still would not say it's quite on the level of Genichiro in terms of how long it took me to beat him, but it still took me a bunch of tries, and I was just very happy when it was finally done. And yeah. More than anything, because it was like between the Guardian Ape and Great Shinobi Owl, I came close in many cases to just kind of feeling like, okay, am I going to be just stuck here and not be able to move on? Because like the Guardian Ape I had to beat in order to progress. The Great Shinobi Owl I had to beat in order to progress. Both of them were required bosses. They weren't someone I could just skip for a little while, like some of the side things like the Headless. And so just getting stuck on them for a while was more frustrating, and actually finally being able to get through just worked out much better for me. Now, something that I saw a lot of in like YouTube comments on videos I'd watch for, tips on these fights is people saying, oh yeah, Mortal Blade is just a cheat, it's just a cheap way to win. And I'm looking at this, I'm saying, it might seem that way because you're watching like these big streamers who are super skilled and know the timing perfectly and everything else, who have practiced this down to a T, can get it perfect every time. But from what I found, having Mortal Blade does not make it easy. Now, yes, it does a good amount of damage. It is very effective against posture as well. But it's not a guarantee, because still, if the enemy happens to be in the middle of an attack, chances are the Mortal Blade is not going to go through that. Now, yes, it can sometimes still do some chip damage through their attacks, but it's really not even a guarantee. And so, like, I could see someone saying that the cheese is where you make an enemy basically jump off the map. Like I've seen frequently for the I can't remember what the name of the demon boss is, but there's like this demon boss that appears late game, which I haven't seen yet, but where that's in the same field where you originally fought Gyobu Oniwa. And that one, if you can jump on a certain tower, which is not an easy jump to make, but if you can make that jump at the beginning of the fight, then you can jump over to a roof that's nearby, and then you can go over past that onto like an island thing over there. And then the boss will just jump off the map and you can beat him. Instead of doing it 3 phases, it's just, that's it. That's all you have to do. That I could say, yes, that is cheating. It is a cheese. It requires some skill because you still have to figure out how to get the jump right, which I was trying to practice the jump a bit because I was considering, at least whenever I have to fight Gyobu Oniwa for a specific ability, like you have to do a boss gauntlet, and I think you can heal in between each fight, but you have to fight him and then Lady Butterfly and then like a stronger version of Genichiro. And you have to do these basically back to back, but like I said, I'm pretty sure it's you hit an idol in between, so you restore your gourds and everything. And I don't know if you lose to one, if you have to redo the whole thing, or if it's just you can retry that one particular fight. But regardless, the point is that whenever I fight Gyobu Oniwa on that one, my intention is if I can figure out how to get up on that tower ahead of time, because I have to practice before that fight since he destroys the tower partway into the fight, then I will use that cheese because I've already beaten him legitimately. Now, if not, I mean, he wasn't that hard once I, learned how to beat him. But yeah, it's that one I could say, yes, that is absolutely something you could call a cheese because it is a cheese, because you are doing something that a tool that the game doesn't give you exactly. It's basically using a glitch of the game. It's exploiting something that is not easy to do. And so I can consider, I would say, yes, that is a cheese. But when it comes to just using an ability that the game gives you, I don't consider that to be a cheese. I think that's just, yes, it's a way to make the game, to make the fight easier. But this elitism of, oh, you have to do it exactly the way I did it or it doesn't count, I think that's just silly, It's like some of the cheeses that I did in Dark Souls 3 against the Dancer particularly, that was a huge cheese that I used, glitching backward into the door so I could just kill her with arrows from afar, or getting the, what's the name of that armor?
Dragon Slayer?
Dragon Slayer armor, yes. That was definitely a cheese. That one I'm kind of ashamed that I did, and whenever I go back and go against those again, I will beat them legitimately. But using Mortal Blade, I don't consider that to be a cheese by any stretch. So, yeah, but that brings me to the last boss I fought that I absolutely did cheese in that manner. And that is the true corrupted monk that you fight in the last area of the game, the last major area anyway, which I basically just barely started yesterday. And because I just, even though I'm sure I could have beaten him without doing the cheese, if I had taken the time to do it, because especially since a lot of the moves are similar, are basically the same as the original form that you face, even though there's 3 phases instead of just 1, I was just like, okay, it's late. I want to see if there's a good cheese to do, and there is. And so the way the cheese works is basically when you walk into the arena, the boss jumps down, and then you can go off to the side of the map, and there's this tree that you can hide behind, that you can stand behind, that's like right next to the ledge. But of course, as long as you don't jump or get knocked off, you'll just stay there. So you go to this spot, and then you just block the boss until they do their unblockable attack. And then the idea is you jump off backwards as they're doing that, and then they'll get stuck on that little spot there. And then you can go around to the boss, and then you can just attack them repeatedly. You kind of have to stand in a specific spot to where it like closes in the camera really well, because otherwise they can still counterattack. And you just kind of stand there and whack away at them until their first health bar goes down. And if you get out of that spot, then they will disappear and reappear with some ghostly forms and stuff, and go on to their second phase. But as long as you stand in the right spot and maintain the correct camera angle, if you keep attacking them, then they'll kind of like freeze in the middle of what's supposed to be their transformation into the second form, and then they just die. And so you skip the second and third phase. And that is what I did. Now, I will more likely than not end up having to fight them again. I don't know if I necessarily would need to do it on this playthrough. My guess, I believe the only time I would have to fight it again is on a repeat playthrough, which I would really just be doing to if I wanted to get the additional endings, and because there's, I think, 3 different endings you can get, and I don't know all the exact requirements for those, but because of that would be my reason for refighting it. And who knows, maybe at some point, if I'm just like, okay, I just kind of want to challenge myself a little bit and play some Sekiro, but I don't really want to like fully play the game, so I'll just go into the boss memory and then reattempt this fight and see what I can do. So that's a possibility. But the way it was last night was, it was already almost 10 o'clock. It was basically just like right before 10 o'clock, and I did not particularly feel like trying to figure out the boss fight after I tried it a couple of times and just died. And so I decided instead that I would just do the cheese, and so I did. And it didn't work every single time, because there was a couple times, like one time where I got the boss to where they were supposed to transition to their second phase, and they did. And then there was like another time where I had blocked them until they did their attack, and they didn't quite get stuck in that corner. And so then when I got revived and came, or, you know, after I fell off the ledge and came back out, they were able to come out from behind the tree and then continue the fight. So it's definitely kind of you have to be in just the right spot for both the blocking and the attacking and everything else in order for them to be stuck in that spot and be able to cheese them. But it was kind of fun to do, and seeing as how I've beaten every other boss completely legitimately, it's like, I'll just have fun this one time. And more likely than not, the demon, I think it's called Demon of Hatred, I think that's the name of it, but more likely than not, I'm not planning to cheese that one, because even though I know it's going to be a hard fight, that's one that I really do want to experience fully the normal way. Particularly because I cheesed this one and I haven't cheesed anything else. So yeah, but anyway, I am definitely enjoying myself right now. I mean, because I am in the final main area of the game. There's, you know, still going to be some additional, I mean, like I haven't gotten to any of the sub areas yet. Like, I've basically just gotten the first idol when you get to the area, and then the idol that appears right after you beat the corrupted monk. And then beyond that, I haven't gotten any further. Like, I wandered a little bit into the next area, but I didn't get super far. I died a couple times, and I just haven't really played today. So we'll kind of see where I get with that, but I definitely am enjoying it a lot, and I'm glad that I've given this a chance again. More likely than not, this is going to be the #1 game I play for the time being, because of the fact that, for one, you know, it is one of my goals to actually finish the game, you know, this year, because I wanted to finish a Souls-like before, finish a Souls-like that I had started last year before the year is up. And since this one I was already the furthest in anyway, now I'm definitely the furthest. It just seems like the perfect candidate to focus on, and beyond that, we'll see. I will say, though, that as I've been playing this, I've definitely been leaning more towards this may be the last Souls-like I play for the year. We'll kind of see how I feel by the time I get to the end. Just because of the fact that, like, there are just enough times where it gets really frustrating to where it probably wouldn't hurt for me to play something different. Or, you know, play some different kind of games. Because, I mean, of course, there's obviously Black Flag Resynced, but that one's not, like, it's not super high priority. Yes, I plan to continue playing it, but it's not something to where I feel like if I stop playing it, I'm going to have super big regrets, at least not initially. Like, I will at some point, or, I mean, I'm sorry. I do want to finish it regardless, because I do enjoy the game, but because of the fact that I've played Black Flag already a couple of times, and this is mostly the same game, it's not a huge deal to me if I don't finish that. And Lightning Returns is one where, like, I definitely want to play it, and I definitely want to finish it, because, you know, I've been wanting to finish this trilogy, and I like what I played. But it's also one where, like, I would say actually between that and Black Flag, I'm probably more wanting to finish Lightning Returns in the short term than Black Flag, just because of the fact that it's something different enough, and at the same time also is something that I've just gotten into. So I guess last thing I want to mention with this, because this is the only other game that I was playing was this, but is that I did install it on my laptop, where as previously I had only played it on my desktop and my Steam Deck, primarily on the Steam Deck. And since I can get 60 FPS on all three, near locked even on the Steam Deck, I should say it's locked on the desktop, locked on the laptop, and near locked on the Steam Deck, then it's something that I can easily just play this game and nothing else while I'm working on it. And also because of the fact that I know that if I stop playing the game, then I'm going to end up like losing my muscle memory and that sort of thing. And then, yeah. Plus, of course, obviously, since I'm getting fairly close to the end of the game, it makes the most sense to just stick with it until I'm done. So, maybe by next week I will be actually finished with Sekiro. At least my first playthrough. I kind of doubt that I'll do a second playthrough anytime soon, but eventually I could see myself doing that. So, yep, that's everything.
All right, good stuff. So I guess while we're on the topic, I'll just mention stuff I had with Sekiro. Glad that you've went back to that and that you've made a lot of progress. It's definitely been, I mean, you've definitely made it pretty far. I will say that the headless, that was something that I was very intimidated by, partially because I've just heard just a lot of discussions around the headless, and then I saw this one video, just sort of like a parody of Sekiro, where it's like, all right, cool, it's a hard game, we're going through it, and it's like, all right, the early bosses and stuff, all right, they're difficult, they're giving you a hard time and whatnot, and you're like, all right, that wasn't so bad, once you beat it, and then at the end of it, it's just like the first headless you encounter, and it's like, I'm like, okay, now I don't want to see one, and I know what you're talking about, like the very first one you can encounter, because I almost went down into that cave, and I was like close to where I could almost see it, and I was like, nope, I'm leaving, right. And I was like, I'm not going back there until I get my divine confetti.
Yeah.
So I definitely applaud you for going against that and having to face two at once. I haven't done that one yet, but I know that it's obviously it's just an optional thing, but I will plan on doing it eventually. And I think in some ways, because of the fact that with the underwater thing, you're not having to walk around, you can move a lot faster. It should make the fight a lot easier, because you also don't have to deal with the slowing fog that they bring. Because that's the worst part about that fight, is just the fact that you move so slowly. You can't move it at a normal speed. And then when they disappear, if you don't move properly, they grab you from behind and they basically like rip out your spleen or whatever it is. And it's just, and if your health isn't high enough, you're dead immediately. So yeah, they suck. But I also am determined to beat every single boss in the game, at least all the ones that I'm able to beat on this playthrough, because I know that there are some of them that don't even appear unless you fulfill certain requirements to get those bosses to appear, which you can't do because there's 3 different endings. It determines like which boss you can face, I think, even at the very end. So okay. And we're just regarding your comments on the Mortal Blade, I really do not see that as a type of cheesing strategy or method whatsoever, because like you said, it is a weapon you can use in the game, that the devs intend for you to use, pretty much anytime you want to. So it's like, why think that's some sort of cheesy method to use it. I mean, it's the same way you could use magic in the Dark Souls games, for example. It's like it's available. For
magic
you
is
to use.
easy mode in Dark Souls. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
And
like,
I
sure,
don't have any
so.
shame with using magic. It's like it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun to use magic in Dark Souls.
Yeah, it's like also with using summons. Like you can use summons as well. It's like it's something you can utilize. Whether or not you choose to is up to you. But it's like it's intentional for you to use. It's not like jumping off a roof and then having the enemy follow you. Like that's a different strategy altogether. Right, exactly. So I don't see that being the same thing. Like, sure, some people may or may not choose to use it. Like I intentionally don't use magic in Dark Souls because I intentionally make my life harder in that essence. But you don't. It's something you can use. And that's up to people to use. So I really don't get that idea of it being a cheese method or cheating, because it's really not. It's not cheating at all if you're using a viable option that the devs give you there. So I really don't see it as cheating there. But going back to Final Fantasy 13, I just had a question about the time aspect, because I sort of was confused by that, especially when you said, like, if you don't fulfill a quest, people die. Is it kind of like Majora's Mask in a sense, where you've got quests and you have a certain amount of time?
Sort of, but Majora's Mask has the time loop, of course, and this does not. Without like really spoiling anything, because it's beginning of the game, you're dealing with this cult that kills people every night, and I think they're ultimately just trying to get to lightning. I don't know if they necessarily know it's lightning they're trying to get to, but they're trying to get to her, and in order to do that, they're killing a person who has the same color hair as her every evening, and if you don't stop them, then they'll keep doing that. And the particular quest, you have to get code numbers that they have spread around the city, and those code numbers make up the code that you need in order to get into their base, so that you can basically stop them and complete this main quest. And it's one of the early game quests, so it's not like as far as I know, the people that are dying are just nameless NPCs, and that's all it is.
Okay. I didn't know if it was something like, hey, these are NPCs that you need or something or like that, or if it's something where it's like, hey, this will block you from another side quest or something if you don't save this NPC in particular, or if it's like someone that could be in your party later on. But okay, that makes sense then. And then one last sort of comment I had was for Metroid Prime Hunters PC port. It definitely sounds very. I love the improvements they've had, especially with the mouse and keyboard controls, but I really find that aspect ratio choice to be very odd. Sure, you keep the original 4:3 is fine as an option, but 21:9 and no 16:9 when the majority of people are using 16:9 monitors. Yeah. And I mean, that really is a choice. But hopefully they get that fixed, because I don't know. I don't know why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
But glad that's working pretty well for the most part. And I mean, while more than 60 FPS would be ideal, hitting 60 is perfectly fine, and it's definitely, from what I remember, a whole lot better than the original DS version anyway. So I'll take that.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember what the DS version runs at. I might just have to pull that out just to check it out, because it's possible it ran at 60. I mean, considering the fact that they got all the other Prime games to 60, it's certainly possible. But honestly, like I said, I don't remember. If I pull it out, then I could tell you for sure if it's run. I mean, at least I can tell you if it's running at 60 or not. I don't know if I could tell you if it's a locked 60, but yeah, anyway. All right, good stuff. Well, let's get into the news. And so today was Gamescom, for 2026, which I had completely forgotten about until I saw that it was live earlier, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll boot it up, and started watching it and was able to catch the whole thing, including the pre-show. But before we get to that, there's a couple of smaller stories to discuss, and I just thought because if we don't discuss them first, we're probably not going to get to them. So the first and foremost story, which is quite exciting to me, is that Konami is working on a variety of different reboots, remakes, that sort of thing, which we've already seen, with what they did with Metal Gear Solid Delta, being a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. But they've also said that they're doing it with Castlevania. Now, they haven't specified whether it's a specific game or if they are starting the series over from scratch, or if they're wanting to remake something, or if they're doing a completely new game in the series and maybe rebooting the direction of it. Because of course they also have, there's the new Castlevania game that's either just came out or is coming out soon. It's actually made by Motion Twin, who did Dead Cells, and as far as I'm concerned, looks fantastic, but it's not made by Konami proper. And of course, there's lots of other games from the back catalog that they've been bringing out, including the GBA and DS collections. But as far as all this goes, I guess, first of all, what are your thoughts on it? But secondly, if they are doing a completely new game, in fact, actually, let me back up. If they're doing a reboot, like a reboot or a remake of an existing Castlevania game, what would you like it to be? And if they are doing a completely new game, what would you like them to do differently?
So, all right.
Three-part question.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I'm of a mixed bag per se, because it's very interesting that they're rebooting the games or series, I mean, we don't know the degree, like you said, but if they're rebooting the series, it's okay, how are you rebooting it? Is it going to be a brand new take like the Lords of Shadows games? Is it going to be are you essentially going to remake the series but keep it essentially the same as the current mainline titles, or something else entirely? I don't know, so that's gonna be interesting. But so I am interested in that aspect. Or if it's just like a remake, then I'm like, okay, which one? And I'm like, how are you also going to approach it? Because I think that's partially where I am with it right now, because it's interesting, because I mean, Castlevania has changed drastically from its original inception to now. I mean, even if you don't even just go to Belmont's Curse, which is the latest one that is either coming out or is out now. Even before that point, I can't remember what the last entry was for this series, barring possibly Lords of Shadow 2.
I think that might be the last one.
Okay, so
it might be that, or it might be Mirror of Fate. I don't remember which one came out last.
Okay, then yeah, it's just it's really drastically changed. So I'm really curious. Part of me, because I mean, if you go back from the very first 3-4 or so games that at least the 4 mainline games, they were side-scrolling action games, and then it became the Metroidvania style that we knew, and it had RPG elements, and then it really essentially became that from that point on, and then we got the Lords of Shadow games, which changed things quite a bit, and of course there were the the original 3D games that were, I mean, of course, there was the N64 titles, then there was the PS2 games, which I think there were 2 or 3 of those, Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness, and those were different. So Castlevania has definitely had a change, but of course, the thing that's really stuck by has been the Metroidvania style games. So it's like, okay, how do they handle things? So it's very interesting. What would I like to see? I'm not entirely certain, just because partially I just don't know what they're trying to go for. I mean, would I necessarily want things to be rebooted? I don't know. I mean, maybe I would say remake something that hasn't really worked out, or actually has room for improvement. Like if they remade Castlevania 64 and the sequel, which Legacy of Darkness. If they remade those games, sure, I think that's definitely fine, because there was room for improvement. Or if they remade the PS2 games, I think that's definitely fine as well. I mean, of course, they could always just port those to modern systems like they did with the GBA and DS games. But if they said, we're not going to do that, we're going to remake them from the ground up, I'm like, that's fine. But I'm just not entirely certain, because on one hand, it's interesting what they did with the Lords of Shadow games. And I think particularly maybe with like Mirror of Fate, from what I've played of that. But I'm not entirely certain how I felt about the entire tonal shift. It felt a bit too different to me from the original games and what they were supposed to be. So that on that end, I'm like, I don't know. So I don't know. I mean, granted, I'm also in the sense that Castlevania has had a very, in addition to the gameplay, just the style or the aesthetics of the game have changed drastically. I mean, like from 1 through 4, it was very much, and like I'm borrowing this, but this is the best example that I've heard. You're playing a Hammer horror film game. So like playing the Hammer horror Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman films from Universal. But you were playing that as a video game, and essentially you were dressed up as He-Man while you did that. So I was like, that's a good example, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's like you had that gothic horror style, and you're just like a normal buff dude fighting these guys. And then later on, as the series progressed, it's like, okay, now we're getting a bit more anime-esque into things, especially by the time you get to, Aria of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, stuff like that. It's like, all right, now you just like have special powers and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it definitely really kind of changed. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, if you rebooted the series and you sort of went to that original style, but you still also had that Metroidvania feel, like the modern, backtracking, getting new skills and doing stuff I'm like, maybe that could work. I like that, because so I don't know. It's really interesting. So I would have to really wait and see what Konami does, because I'm intrigued, but I'm also just somewhat shy of what they could do. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm very interested and curious, but I just need more information to know what they're doing. So what would I like to see? Again, I probably would say the thing I would like to see the most would just be a remake of the N64 games that really could have been improved upon, or just get a full remake while maintaining everything that the originals have, but just like improve the gameplay mechanics, update the visuals, obviously, and maybe add any other quality of life improvements to the PS2 games, because I've heard those were actually pretty good. They just were, of course, obviously overshadowed by all the 2D Castlevania games.
Yeah.
But also, if Konami wants to, I mean, granted, we have like a bunch of ways to play this, But if a Konami just wants to finally port over
Symphony of the Night.
Symphony of the Night, I'm sorry, I cannot believe I had a blank. But if they want to port over Symphony of the Night, that's an easy purchase from me, Yeah. If they want to do that, that's easy money. So I don't know why they haven't done it, but they could do that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this.
Okay. So, of course, as an overall thing, like I'm all for more Castlevania, as long as they can do it properly. I mean, obviously without Iga there, that certainly makes a difference. But if we were going to say having a remake, I definitely am with you on remaking the N64 ones. Now, from what you played of Castlevania 64, because obviously I only played like a tiny bit of Legacy of Darkness, would that one be considered more of a Metroidvania style Castlevania game, or is that just more similar to the older ones?
That one, from what I played, is kind of still Castlevania-ish. I mean, like more like, I guess, the newer ones to a degree. I didn't get really too far into it because I was just like, I'm having difficulty figure out where I even need to go.
Yeah.
And whatnot. But I would definitely say it's not like the older ones. It is definitely like you have a large area and you do have to go and backtrack and you have to get certain items and bring them here to do this and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, from a remake kind of standpoint, I definitely would rather see that. Probably remakes of those games, potentially of the PS2 ones as well. Especially if the PS2 ones are better games in general. All they really need to do is put a fresh coat of paint, maybe make some quality of life improvements, that sort of thing. If they were going to do a like brand new type of Castlevania game, the ideal, in my opinion, would be to make a brand new 3D actual Metroidvania style. Or even do a 3D that's more along the lines of Symphony of the Night. So have a 3D Symphony of the Night style game. Potentially even starring Alucard still. Just because like there's so much potential with 3D Metroidvanias. And there's just not a lot of them. I mean, because like Lords of Shadow 1 and 2 are both, well, at least the first one, and I'm pretty sure the second one, are God of War style games, basically. And then Mirror of Fate was an actual Metroidvania, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. That was the first Castlevania game I actually played all the way through, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. I mean, Symphony of the Night is a far better game, but Mirror of Fate was also still really good. And I think that doing a proper, fully 3D Metroidvania style would be really nice. Now, from what you're saying about Castlevania 64, it sounds like they basically were doing that with those games. And so, of course, that actually makes me more interested in checking them out, like, fully. But even without that, if they're going to do a brand new game, I think that would be the ideal way to go. Because for one, the 2D games just don't necessarily appeal to people quite as much. And of course, they already have Belmont's Curse. That's the new one that's coming out, right? That one's already coming out. And that one's looking fantastic. And, 2D Metroidvanias are a dime a dozen. 3D Metroidvanias are not that common, though. At least not comparatively speaking. I mean, they do exist. They're just not as common. And doing it with an actual Castlevania, having that would be fantastic. Now, my ideal situation would be they take the older games, the older 3D ones, Castlevania 64, Legacy of Darkness, the PS2 titles, just port them to modern platforms. Maybe do a collection for the N64 games and a collection for the PS2 games. Even better, a collection of all of them in a single package. But do that and then do something brand new on top of that. That would be the ideal. But if I had to pick between the two, I would probably rather just have I think actually the bringing the old games forward would be nice, but at the same time, I also would just love to see a brand new one that's an actual 3D Metroidvania or Castlevania game that takes all those elements. And I mean, I think, yeah, doing one though as a Symphony of the Night style or an Aria of Sorrow type would also be really good, because like those are both really good styles of games, and they're similar. I mean, obviously they have a lot of similar elements, but they're not exactly the same. So having either of those kinds of things would be really neat. And yeah, that would be fantastic. Now, it's not as though we don't have a million different Metroidvanias available to us without Castlevania bringing anything out, but if they play their cards right, they could certainly draw in a whole new set of people.
Yeah. And listening to you describe it, especially describing how if they rebooted the series or remade the Symphony of the Night, I'm also wondering, and also looking back, part of what they were doing with Castlevania 64 was, I guess, trying to translate the first four, or at least like 1 and Super Castlevania 4, over to the 3D environment, because you were a whip-wielding Belmont, and like that was sort of like the whole mechanic of what you're using. And so I was like, all right, so that didn't really work out that well. If they didn't remake that game, maybe then try to fulfill what they were trying to do with that shift to 3D, and possibly just make Castlevania, or reboot, and I guess technically this would be the third time they've done this, since 4 and Adventures were considered, I guess, reboots or remakes of the game, to make it how you see it. But do that for Castlevania 1. Just like keep it sort of like in the same kind of style, and have the same weapons, but just, have it in 3D. You can have that Metroidvania style, but, maybe instead of having some sort of special abilities, you actually find the certain weapons that you would use, like the cross, the holy water, the daggers, like, and you like need to use certain ones for certain areas to unlock new routes. So you can do that, and that way you sort of like have that feel, or have that style of the original game, but still also have the sort of newer mechanics from later games, and have that Metroidvania style of having to find abilities and skills to unlock, to traverse. So that could also be interesting in that aspect. Now, will they do it? Probably not, but being Simon Belmont again would be interesting in that perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they didn't have the modern, backtracking and all that stuff, even if they just went with more of a traditional style but made it 3D, and just basically modernized it, that could still really work. In fact, I think that would actually work a little better, because personally, like the older style, I mean, it's interesting, but it doesn't appeal to me nearly as much. And it's not like a visual thing. It's just I don't really like playing that style of game when it's in the 2D space necessarily, which is weird, because I actually like 2D Metroidvanias better in general, but I think that it would appeal to a lot more people as well if they had it more of a modern style of a 3D game, but like still maintain a lot of the similar mechanics, but then have it 3D. I mean, yeah, I like your idea better, but I'm just saying that I would even be fine with the other one, because that would still be interesting, something to breathe new life into those older style games. But yeah, all right. It's later than I thought it was going to be. We haven't even gotten to Gamescom yet. Or the second topic. Apart from that, shoot. Well, we can skip that second topic and always come back to it next week, since I didn't even talk about it in the intro anyway. But let's go over some Gamescom announcements, and we'll try not to spend too much time on this, but we can definitely get into that. So I guess starting off, the easiest thing for us to do, I think, at this point is probably going to be to just... Yeah, sorry. Let's just go over some things that stood out to us. So, why don't you start us off?
So the first thing that sort of stood out to me was, and I was very surprised by this, is that GeForce Now is getting support for the Steam controller, and later this year the Steam Machine, which really surprised me because, mainly just because the Steam Machine is Linux based.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you can install
Linux
Windows,
and
but
AMD.
Yeah, and AMD of all things as well. So the fact that GeForce Now is being fully supported, I mean, I'm not going to be using it at all, but I just think that's pretty cool. So obviously also that means if you're on Linux, you should be able to use that later on, I believe. But I mean, I think that's pretty cool. Obviously you won't be able to use certain, or you might not be able to use certain features, but still, that's cool for people who probably have been using GeForce Now, and might be getting one later, or might be getting like a Steam controller or a Steam machine at some point, and you're like, okay, I want to use it on here, or I want to actually just use my Steam controller in GeForce Now. I think that's a big plus for you there. So
yeah,
hey, that's good news.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed that one, but yeah, that's definitely cool. So first thing that stood out to me, and this was actually like, I think one of the last two announcements of the show that we already knew was coming, but it was still kind of cool. And this is not even something I'm interested in because of the fact that I'm going to play it, but more just I think it's great that they're doing it. And that's that they're doing a remaster of The Witcher 3, which is going to be on so it's going to be on PS5 and series consoles and PC and Switch 2. And it's a free update for everybody, which is like, that is fantastic. I love seeing that type of thing because obviously that doesn't normally happen for consoles, especially so many years later, because it's been 11 years since the game originally came out. And yes, there's going to be a DLC as well, a brand new DLC for it, which is also very cool. I can say, as I've said before, I won't play this because while I think the game itself looks fantastic and I know that I would enjoy most of the game, the simple fact that the game has the nudity and sex scenes are just like, I can't play this. I have to stay away from it because of that, because I don't want that to be a temptation to check out. And so I just have to completely separate myself from that game. But I still think it's very cool that this update is free for everybody. They're adding a bunch of quality of life stuff as well as improving the visuals and frame rate and all of that, especially considering the Switch version of The Witcher 3, from everything I heard, was horrendous in terms of its visuals. Although I think they did actually add a 60 FPS mode for it. It just was extremely low resolution to get that. But
yeah, I also was going to mention that as well. I think that's very great that they bring it in. Like you said, it's free. That's something you really don't see these days. A lot of people are going to charge you for that. So I think it's great that they're doing it. And like you said, it's an 11-year-old game, and they're giving this a free update. Of course, it's for also to help bring people in for the upcoming DLC.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's wonderful that they're doing this. So good on CD Projekt Red.
Yep.
And then let's see. The next thing I was to talk about was, where was that? Yeah. So was that right? Because I thought we had a release date for Crazy Taxi. Oh yeah. So earlier this year during I think the Summer Game Show, we talked about Crazy Taxi, and that it looks like that it's getting a launch, or at least a tentative launch date, or it's coming out next year. So we don't know when, but it also has multiplayer, which is going to be good for people to play. But it's going to come out next year, so I think that's definitely great. And I'm still on the fence about this. I'm still like the art design is really making me go, this just reminds me a bit too much of Fortnite. But, I still might come back later on and say, I'll give this a try.
Yeah.
Because, I've never played the first Crazy Taxi. I think I have the ports in my Steam library, but I don't remember. But, if this is as good as that, if not better, then I might just say, I'll give it a shot. I might just look apart from the aesthetics and just say, I'll give it a whirl.
Yeah. Yeah, that one definitely looks like fun. I have the original version on I have the mobile version because they gave out all those games for free before they shut everything down. Unfortunately, I didn't end up picking it up before it got removed from Steam, but I do at least have the mobile version, and I only tried it for like 5 minutes one time. I don't even think I think at the time I didn't have my controller attachment handy, and so I was trying to play with touch controls, and that was disgusting. So I wouldn't do that again. But yeah, I still think it's cool that exists. So there's that. The next thing that I definitely wanted to talk about, or just point out, was that game called Zoo Punk, which is from the same creators who made Fist, Forged, and Shadow Torch. And it's 3D action game. I can't tell if it has co-op or if it just allows you to rotate between different characters with different strengths and everything else, but looks fantastic. We had seen it before, and I thought it looked cool back then, but that was before I had played Fist. And now that I played that, I definitely am very, very interested in Zoo Punk. Even more so, and I don't remember if it had a release date attached to it, but either way, I'm very interested.
And then there's one game, let me see, I have my list here. This one, I mentioned this just because while I'm not in while I have sort of had my falling out with Capcom, they announced Mega Man Dual Override, which is interesting for them to sort of bring that back. So, of course, they had Mega Man 11, but they haven't really done anything brand new since then. Of course, they've ported over older releases like the Zero series and the Star Force series, I think 2 years ago. But this is a brand new thing for them. So that's interesting. And they also have announced that there's going to be a Mega Man skin coming to Pragmata as well. Oh, yeah. So that was pretty interesting, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. The skin for Pragmata looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
I would try it out briefly if I was still playing the game, but since I already finished it a while back, I don't think I'll be going back to it anytime soon. Let's see here. So this is a big one that this had been previously announced, but in fact most of these games have been previously announced, but this one stood out to me more because the fact that I had forgotten about it, and then it popped up and I was reminded, it's coming to Steam as well, and that is Ananta, which is like an anime GTA game with Spider-Man type mechanics where you grapple between buildings and stuff, and it just looks like it'll be pretty fun. It's free to play, so I'm guessing there's probably gonna be some pretty gross monetization there, but I'm willing to check it out. For a free to play game, I'll check it out when it comes out early next year. I like to label it as GTA for the rest of us because I don't care about actual GTA, but this one looks like it'll be really fun. And of course, I like the anime art style far more than actual GTA, and it doesn't take itself so seriously like GTA does. GTA takes itself seriously, but then also has the really irreverent humor that like the ridiculous radio commercials and stuff that are typically really funny. But yeah.
And I guess the one last thing that I'll mention, of course, this is something that we've talked about quite a bit throughout the year, and that's something that isn't new whatsoever, but there was Final Fantasy VII, but they showed off the Ruby, Emerald, and Ultima weapon fights that they showed off, which was definitely interesting, to say the least. Now, obviously, these were definitely very difficult in the original Final Fantasy VII, so, but also things have the gameplay is also different, so I don't know how that difficulty is going to cross over this time around, but definitely interesting to see that there. And also showing off the naval combat as well with the submarine was I think that's new, so interesting there.
Yeah, I actually skipped past that trailer because I just decided I'd kind of go blackout on that since yes, I played the original Final Fantasy VII and everything, but I still haven't finished Rebirth, and so I kind of want to not have anything spoiled for me that I don't already know about, because I know there's some things that are different, and even still, I'm just like, I don't really need to be sold on it. Like, I'm planning to play it. It's not going to be day one for me, for sure, because I still haven't finished Rebirth, and I mean, unless I finish Rebirth before that comes out, more likely than not, it's just going to be I'll wait for a discount and then buy it. But yeah. Yeah, good stuff. There's a handful of other games that stood out to me, some of which are positive and then one of which is kind of like, I'm not so sure about this one. So I'm going to talk about the one that I'm not so sure about. It's a game called Warlock. It's really, I'm trying to remember. It's a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Mm-hmm.
And at first watching it, I'm kind of like, okay, this looks kind of promising. But there's a few red flags for me. First of all, the fact that the game is called Warlock, which typically when you think of Warlock, you think of like a male witch. But it's a woman who's the Warlock. Okay. I mean, so that's a bit of a red flag. The characters also were pretty chatty. That's another red flag. The combat, like, some of the stuff was flashy, but it also seemed very simplistic. And, I mean, granted, yes, this was obviously early in the game that they were showing, but there's just enough red flags to where I'm like, I'll check and see, I'll see what people say about it, and I'll watch some more gameplay after it comes out and see if it looks any interesting. But right now I'm kind of more on the cautious pessimism side of things with that.
Yeah, that one also, I was like raising an eyebrow. I was like, okay, that might be intriguing. Then I was also, not too long ago, I was like, yeah, I don't know about this one. So, and also I was also intrigued because it's gameplay wise, it is different from your traditional D&D and also, Baldur's Gate style of combat. Yeah. So I was like, okay, that's an interesting take, doing a more so action-based gameplay than, turn-based, which could also be why it's, as you said, a bit simplistic, because it's so different. The team might not be used to doing something that is, in this style of genre. So it could be something that could be worked on, but I don't know. Like you said, it's still too early to tell. And like you said, those other red flags were like,
Yeah. For sure. Another thing that stood out to me that I guess had been announced before, and I just don't remember actually seeing it, is a game called Mariachi Legends, which is a Metroidvania, and the way that the creator explained it was that Alucard basically already looked halfway like a mariachi guy or something to that effect, and so they basically made like it's a Mexican what's the word I'm looking for, like Legends type of lore for a Metroidvania, action type game, and it's like inspired by, Castlevania and everything, and it looks pretty great. I'm very interested.
I was very surprised by seeing that game because I was very certain that I'd received an email or something saying that it was available for purchase on GOG some time ago. So the fact then that I saw this saying, hey, here's the release day, I'm like, didn't the game already come out? So I was just so confused. And then I went back and looked, I saw, no, it's not out. So I'm like, what type of, what did I see that said that the game was out? And I mean, I can't really go back and find the email or whatnot because it probably never existed, but I almost thought for certain that the game had been out already. So I was just very confused by that point. So if we have, if the game is actually coming out, now I'm great, because I was interested in that game before, because like you said, it does look like Castlevania, but just with that Mexican lore style added to it. So I was like, I like that. You know what? I want to get that. So now that we have more information on what's coming out, I'm down for that. And I'm glad I didn't miss it, actually.
Yeah. Let's see here. Another thing that stood out to me was there was what looked to be, I mean, I wouldn't quite call it a boomer shooter in the same sense as an actual boomer shooter, but it's a shooter where you're playing as a boomer, and it's called No Law, where you're playing as like an old guy, and I mean, it's first person, and I mean, I think there's a variety of different ways he tackles different situations and stuff, but I don't know, it just looks pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I don't know if I might get that, but it definitely seemed interesting as well to me.
And then this one is kind of more of like a smaller one, but there is a game that was from Hoyoverse that really stood out to me because it was completely different from what they usually do. It wasn't like the anime style and everything like they've had for what's the big one that they have out?
Genshin Impact.
Genshin Impact, yeah. It's nothing like that at all, and it looked more like it was a Souls-like game called Notice Fall. And I was just like, this is intriguing, very intriguing. I mean, it's not as though we are, short on Souls likes to play, but regardless, it's still intriguing, and so I was interested from that standpoint.
Okay, I might actually have to check that out because I missed that, and I saw there was something from Hoyoverse, but I just skipped that.
Yeah,
because
I think there was two different things from Hoyoverse. One was more what you expect, and then Notice Fall. I think it's up on Steam for adding to your wish list at least. But yeah, it looked pretty cool. Because it's like when I was watching it, it's like, is this something like Elden Ring? Or actually, when I first saw it, I actually was thinking, is this something from Software? But then at the same, I mean, the way Jeff Keighley introduced it, he said that it was something from a studio that usually that's never done games like this or doesn't normally do games like this. And so, like, when I'm looking at it at first, it's like, it reminds me so much of like a mix of Elden Ring and Dark Souls. And then, and then I saw Hoyoverse, and I'm like, okay, I think I see what he meant. And then when you actually see it, it's like, it's not anime style or anything. I mean, you have, I don't know if it's only a female protagonist you have as a choice, or if that's just one of the options, but not anime style at all. So it was interesting.
Okay, I'll definitely look into that. Thank you for mentioning that, because I would have never looked into that otherwise, just because like Toyoverse, I don't have a stomach for that. So
all right, then there was also a game called, let me find it here, Tare the Unbound, which is another action RPG in the vein of like Diablo and Path of Exile, and I thought that one looked really cool.
And correct me, or maybe I didn't see it. Okay, never mind. I thought there was something that I had seen, but I'm not seeing that. So never mind.
Let me double check on that game, because I can't remember if that's already listed on Steam or not. It might not be. Oh, okay, that one's not listed on Steam yet. Notice Fall.
Oh.
My guess is it'll probably end up being there tomorrow or something, because that's a lot of times what ends up happening. But yeah. Let's see here. There's a few others that were just more like things we had already previously seen, but the last one I think I really wanted to just mention, okay, there's two more I want to mention. One, and both of these we've seen previously, but they still look great. One is Tides of Annihilation, which we had seen before. It's like a third-person action RPG. Looks fantastic. Lots of flying and swords and all sorts of cool stuff. Female protagonist that's attractive without being sexualized, which is very nice. And then the other one is a game called Sea of Remnants, which we had seen probably also at Summer Games Fest, or not Summer Games Fest. Maybe it was Summer Games Fest. It was either that or it may have been Game Awards. And that one's like, it's like a pirate RPG, and it looks pretty crazy. Because it has like very action heavy sea battles that are like the battles from Black Flag on steroids. And then it has turn-based combat as well. And it has an interesting like art style for the characters and that sort of thing. And I thought that one looked really cool. I mean, I'd seen it before whenever they previously showed it, but seeing it again, I'm like, yeah, this is very interesting. I'm very, very, very interested.
Agreed.
All right. I think that's really it as far as the big ones. I mean, there's a handful of other things that kind of stood out, but nothing quite as much as those. So, all right, let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. Why don't you start us off?
All right, so my recommendation is going to be to listen to the Distant World soundtracks. These are the Final Fantasy live concert recordings that in this the concert tour was Distant Worlds. So these were definitely good, and I've had the opportunity to listen to one Distant Worlds tour in person actually
Nice.
some years ago. That was definitely enjoyable. So if you do it, I definitely recommend it. And also because, and I was using this example in my in my video that I'm working on, I also definitely recommend Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI because it is spectacular. But I heavily recommend the 2010 recording that was in the second album because to me that is the best version of. I think there were there was one or two other recordings, but that one is just perfection, and it really is the epitome of what that song was. So if the Super Nintendo wasn't restricted, this is what it would have been, in my opinion. So yeah.
So I have to ask you, have you heard the Black Mage's versions of the songs? Nobuo Uematsu worked with. I mean, it's like basically Nobuo Uematsu made a rock. They did metal arrangements of a bunch of these songs, and that was one of them that they did. They also did.
I've heard several of the Black Mage's tracks. I haven't heard that one, but I have heard several, and I definitely agree that they are good.
One of my favorites of theirs is the one they did for You're Not Alone from Final Fantasy IX. It's like yeah, I mean that's a great song anyway. The original version is already great, but the Black Mage's version is like, oh, that's so good. That's so good. And
I don't, and
because that's the song that plays when Zidane is like kind of dealing with realizing what he is, and he's like trying to walk through alone, and then other people come in and are helping him fight through these battles. It's like near the end of disc 3. Because you've beaten 9, right?
No, I have not beaten 9. No,
okay, so
no.
What I said was not really spoiling anything because I didn't say anything about.
Oh no, yeah.
Okay, so that's why you wouldn't know that, but yeah, maybe you'll have to correct that next year.
I definitely want to, because that is on my list, and I really want to get to the game because I really have enjoyed what I've played so far. So I might make that part of my 2027 resolution.
Yeah, and do it with mods, because there's a bunch of great mods for the PC version, including like widescreen and HD textures and all that. Make it like basically like a remaster, like a real remaster. So. Okay, so yeah, that's a great song. So good. But anyway, when you get to that point, you'll know what I'm talking about, because it's such a good song, so good. But I mean, 9 was a very good game. Okay. Anyway, all right, my recommendations. First of all, when you are in the Ashina Depths in Sekiro, when you get to the Hidden Forest idol, find the source of the music before attempting to kill everything unless you're grinding. Basically, there's a bunch of spirit enemies that show up in this area. It's a foggy area with a bunch of spirit enemies that show up, and of course, they'll just like randomly appear and that sort of thing. Well, not really randomly, like they're in set locations, but initially I was going in there and I was going through and killing a bunch of these spirit enemies and all that. And it's like, okay, that's great for grinding, but you can actually completely bypass all of these enemies. And if you find the source of where the music is coming from, you kill that mini boss that's extremely easy to kill once you get to him. Then the fog disappears and all those enemies disappear. Which makes it a lot easier to navigate around, because you're not dealing with invisible enemies suddenly appearing and all that, and it's just easier to see where you're going. So, secondly, I'm going to recommend saving the Headless for after you've defeated the Corrupted Monk in Fountainhead Palace, because after you've defeated the Corrupted Monk, you have the ability to buy Divine Confetti. And so you can stock up, and that way you don't have to go grind for it, because there is a spot that's decent to grind for it, but it's just like some of the enemies are a real pain in the butt. It's in that temple beneath where you go up to fight Genichiro. There's blue-robed guys that have swords, and they're a pain to deal with sometimes if you're as unskilled as I am. And so if you don't have to grind that out, and instead you can just buy as much Divine Confetti as you want, because the problem is that they don't drop it very often. It's a very rare drop. So it will drop once in a while, and like you might get a run where you get 3 of them in a run, and then another like 10 runs where you get none. And so it's much easier if you can just buy them. And they're only 300 a piece. So it's relatively inexpensive. Of course, I'm like very low on funds, so I couldn't buy much of any. And so the last time I tried to go up against a Headless, I only had 2 of them on hand, and I did not succeed. So I'm going to have to do some other grinding, but I want to do it for some of the abilities anyway, so that I can get those, and then I can use the money I get from that to buy a bunch of Divine Confetti and give it a go again. But yeah, that's what I have for recommendations.
I'll make a note of that, definitely.
All right, dissuasions.
My dissuasion is for Power World, do not go up against any of the, I guess I'll call this, newer game content. And by that, I mean anything past the original 5 tower bosses, unless you are completely prepared. Because there definitely is a definitely noticeable jump in difficulty after you beat the 5th boss, because the enemies and the fortresses and definitely the bosses are a huge jump up, where I think definitely they nerfed the early game parts of the early bosses. Those they nerfed them, but they forgot to, or they intentionally didn't nerf the rest of the game. So you're going through the game just breezing through more or less and just like, all right, this is not so bad. And then by the time you get to, you know, the Sakurajima Island and stuff like that, and the Faybreak content, it's like, this is definitely atrocious right now. So if you cannot deal with the enemies without dying, don't even think about attempting the enemy fortresses, let alone the bosses, because if you can't handle those, you're not going to be able to handle those bosses. So definitely don't do that. So don't bother. That's my dissuasion.
All right. Good stuff. Well, my dissuasions, first of all, when it comes to Sekiro or Dark Souls, anything like that, don't let the elitists keep you from using the mechanics that the game gives you to use. Now, I personally don't think that it's a good idea to cheese everything, like actually cheese them using glitches and all that, because then you really don't feel the satisfaction of actually beating them. But you can still do that if that's what you really want to do. But regardless, I just definitely think that it's important to not let the elitists tell you that, oh, you can't beat it this way, you know, that doesn't count as actually beating it. Because if you're using the mechanics and the abilities and everything else that the game gives you, that's just the way it is, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Second thing is, in the Fountainhead Palace in Sekiro, do not jump into the water at the beginning of the level, because if you jump into the water at the beginning of the level, you will get sniped by an enemy that keeps firing electrical arrows at you, and you will get electrocuted and die in the water. So just don't make that mistake. Once you kill that enemy, then you can be in the water, no problem. But until then, just play it safe, because I made the mistake of jumping in there and then it's just getting fired at constantly, getting electrocuted, and then I died in no time. Didn't matter how much health I had. By the time I recovered from one shock, I was getting electrocuted again, and then I was gone. So, all right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I am working on the next video I have, which is just the take that I saw about musicians, orchestral musicians supposedly hating playing video game music. So I am offering a sort of nuanced take on that from multiple perspectives, and so I should have it out by this weekend. Definitely see. It'll just depend on when I actually get to recording it. But yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting.
All right, good stuff. On my end, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. I haven't put out anything new in a bit. The last thing I put out was my Downsides of PC Gaming video that I had long said I was going to do and finally got out a couple months ago. At least I think it's been that long. However long it's been, the point is that it's out. So you can go check that out if you want perspective from a person who actually plays on PC, what the actual downsides are of PC gaming and why they're not necessarily as big of an issue as they seem to be. And that's not to dismiss them altogether, just simply saying that it's kind of nuanced. It's more nuanced than console fanboys and people who have never played on PC would lead you to believe. So there's that. You can also find our podcast on both the YouTube and Rumble. On YouTube, it's at the Orange Box Podcast. On Rumble, it's not a custom URL, but you can still find us there. The video version of the podcast goes live every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, barring technical issues. And then there's also the audio-only version of the podcast, which goes live on all major audio podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and others. And you can get that. That becomes available, goes live every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time, barring technical issues. If you'd like to contact us, you can send an email to us, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can also comment on the video version of the podcast either on YouTube or Rumble, and we'll be sure to read your comment on the show. And it may even give us a nice, interesting discussion like we had last week. So, that is everything. All right, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zara Khan. We are the Orange Box Podcast, and until next time, you too in Sekiro can use snap peas and 3 cheese macaroni. Orange Box Podcast out.